Hello all and welcome back to another Hyper Blue Reviews. Today I have another game from the makers of Ether 1. It's called The Occupation. The Occupation is a first-person mystery that revolves around sneaking around, playing a detective, and puzzle solving. It isn't quite a walking simulator like Ether 1 was. Instead, it's more of a first-person adventure thriller game. Gone though are the expansive worlds that made up Ether 1, and in its place lies a government facility to explore. The Occupation was released in 2019 for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam. For today's review, I'm going to discuss the PS4 version. So, did White Papers create another classic, or is this game a bomb? Let's find out. The game takes place in northwest England in 1987. The intro actually starts 1 year prior with one of the main protagonists, Scarlett Carson, as she attempts to copy files of the Silhouette program onto a floppy disk. She can't get the download done and ends up getting caught during her escape. Of course, she has access to the building, though it's not seen as a weird circumstance. As she travels home for the night, she sees a bomb go off in the distance. It kills many people, including Scarlett's husband. The bomb is deemed as an act of terrorism caused by a man named Alex Dubois. The act of terrorism led to the creation of the Union Act. Per the information the game presents, the Union Act is an act that directly affects the civil liberties of the British population. Never let a good crisis go to waste, am I right? The player then takes the role of Harvey Miller, an attorney that has taken up the case for Mr. Dubois. Alex Dubois states that he wasn't near the Bowman-Carson facility, the facility that was blown up, when experts say that he set off the explosion. Harvey is also writing a piece on what happened and the events that led up to the explosion, but it's lacking a lot of details. It's up to the players to search the Bowman-Carson facility to find clues to exonerate Alex, as well as uncover the truth behind the Union Act. The Occupation features multiple endings, but honestly I feel like they're all basically the same. What I mean by that is, players will be forced to make a choice at the end of the game, and that choice seems to affect which ending the players will get. Although, I'm sure the endings are tied to how many clues you find as well, but that ending choice kind of really seals the deal. The ending itself is a series of newspaper articles detailing what happens to the characters. So, you get different things in those newspaper articles depending on what you pick. At the end though, you get to explore Scarlett's house, and it looks different depending on your choices. Otherwise, the endings seem the same to me. That said, let's discuss the gameplay of The Occupation. As I mentioned before, The Occupation is a first-person adventure game. I'd like to add that it's also a stealth game to a certain degree. Players will spend most of their time hiding from security guards and other workers of the Bowman-Carson facility. As one might expect, the buildings are designed with areas players are allowed to walk around in, and staff-only areas where players are not allowed to be in. Of course, most of the good stuff is hidden in the staff-only sections, so players will need to stealthily creep about to find clues related to potential leads. Everything that players need are kept within Miller's dossier, which can be accessed via the touchpad on the PS4 controller. Players can access Miller's briefcase as well, which can contain multiple items such as tokens and/or floppy disks. That is, as long as there is a flat surface for the suitcase to go. Walking around normally is okay in most cases. Players will definitely want to crouch when going through staff-only areas though. Crouching seems to obscure the player a bit more than standing, which I guess makes sense, but players will still need to be careful as NPCs will still be able to spot them. Players also have the option to run, but running makes a lot of noise, which alerts all the NPCs patrolling the area. Running is useful if you're running late to a meeting, or just want to get through areas that players are allowed to explore. And that's actually something I forgot to mention before. The Occupation's main game all takes place in one day. Each chapter is roughly an hour apart from one another. What makes the Occupation unique, though, is that the in-game time progresses in real time. That is, let's say a level starts at 3:30. Players will be given one real-time hour to collect enough clues to question potential leads related to the Alex Dubois case. It's a neat concept, and it adds a bit of tension to the game. There are 5 to 6 levels with some repeating. Each have their own set of guards, or obstacles, to overcome. Speaking of guards and/or NPCs, their mechanics are really intuitive, and also sometimes baffling. Apparently, the NPCs use a type of AI in addition to scripted events, meaning that the game will try to adapt to your playstyle outside of those scripted events. For instance, if an NPC thinks he or she heard something, they'll be on your ass for quite some time, or they'll just stand around calling out to no one in particular. This is both awesome and kind of annoying at the same time. It's awesome because it adds so much tension in an already tense situation, as you're never sure where the NPC is, unless they're walking around as part of a scripted event. It's annoying though because they can often get stuck in areas that you need to get to, and I'll explain a little more on that later. While I do like this gameplay mechanic, I do have some gripes. The NPCs seem to be able to hear the slightest noises that the players make, even from across the building and through several floors. The NPCs actually remind me a lot of the alien from Alien Isolation. And like that damn alien, the NPCs are always on your ass, even if it doesn't make a lot of sense. Given how easily the NPCs hear you, jumping off of platforms is your worst enemy. If there's a way to descend ledges quietly, I never figured it out, or it just didn't work. There's also an issue where the NPC can spot you from like 50 feet away or more. I guess this makes sense in long hallways, but they catch you really quick when rounding a corner or something. And that's one thing that makes the Occupation difficult. There's no way of really knowing where the NPCs are at any given time. Now that's not a knock on the game though, I actually really like this aspect. You may be okay if you get spotted by an NPC as long as you quickly duck down though. It doesn't always work, but you do get lucky sometimes. It's actually pretty funny though, players can actually scare the guards by sneaking up behind them. And what makes this great is, for instance, if a guard is in a safe zone and players are trying to get out of the staff-only area, they can walk up behind the guard, scare them, and there's no consequence. They don't question how you got there since you're in the safe zone. The last annoying thing in my opinion is guards can get stuck in areas, calling out repeatedly to no one in particular. And when I say stuck, I mean that both literally and figuratively. Like Ether 1, the Occupation contains its fair share of bugs. Guards can sometimes get stuck in the environment, rendering the threat obsolete. Now, when I say figuratively, I mean that the AI gets confused and that it tends to stick to one location, trying to figure out what changed. For instance, if a guard notices that a staff-only area door has been opened, they will investigate it. Well, that makes sense, but sometimes they stick around for longer than needed until another event distracts them. Alright, that's enough gripes. Let's go back to the gameplay mechanics. The goal of the Occupation is to collect information. Players will want to stay hidden as much as possible. If players are caught and they can't get out of a staff-only area in time, then they'll be escorted to a security office. Getting detained by security reduces your overall time by 15 minutes, if I remember correctly. So the penalty is you'll lose time to find clues. Speaking of clues, leads can be solved by finding specific items that the game requests. I found that the game requires you to complete certain leads in the correct order, or else it doesn't count. It apparently doesn't matter if you complete the final step. If you didn't do it in order, it won't count. Also, some leads require the players to print out documents, and sometimes those printers don't work. You can spam on the print button, but nothing happens. I had to back out of the computer screen and go back in several times to get it to work. And that's probably about it for gameplay. I didn't go much into the interrogation, but honestly, it's really just picking different choices and talking. So with that said, let's talk a little about some general things about the Occupation. I mentioned a few bugs in my gameplay section. But here's something that I actually misidentified as a bug. The audio to me seemed buggy at first, especially if you're wearing earbuds. The sounds change depending on which way the player faces. That is, if someone is talking to the character's right, the audio comes in better on the right. This is especially jarring when the character talks on the phone. The receiver is held up to the character's left ear, so no audio on one side during the phone call. I only mention that this seemed buggy to me because sometimes I play games with one earbud, and it happens to be my right ear. I initially thought that the game was buggy, then I thought that my earbuds were broken, and then I figured out what was going on. So I guess in the long run, I'm the fool.
Explosion at the Bowman-Carson building.
Like Ether 1, players can pick up a variety of items located throughout the levels. Some are just there as red herrings, some have clues about combinations, codes, etc., and others are collectibles. There are a few different types of collectibles here, with some actually being tied to trophies. There are cassettes and records hidden throughout all the levels, and there are two different types of each. For the records, there are some that are out in the open and some that are hidden. The hidden records are the only ones that count towards the trophy. As for the cassettes, there are a variety of these as well. For one, there are cassettes that are tied to the story, and those don't necessarily count as collectibles. There are two other types of cassettes though. One is an interview tape, and the other is a music cassette. The interview cassettes feature interviews from two important characters to the story. These are required for the other collectibles trophy. The music cassettes don't net you a trophy, but they are fun to collect. One neat thing about the collectibles is you can actually interact with them in Harvey Miller's apartment after you beat the game. And on top of that, you can play any of the music at your leisure. I mentioned that the game is played in real time earlier. Each level takes roughly an hour or so to complete. The hour plus is done in real time, and this is a neat idea and concept, but I don't like it at all. The main reason I don't care for this is because there's no save feature during the level. The game only saves at the beginning of the level. This forces players to play the level straight and live with the consequences or results of their playthrough, unless the players restart the level. So for people with little time to play games, it can be tricky to finish a level. This isn't going to affect my rating, but I figured I would mention it if you're looking for a quick game to play. The graphics in The Occupation are absolutely gorgeous. That's something White Paper Games has going for them. Ether 1 had amazing graphics as well. The environments are absolutely gorgeous in both games. Speaking of Ether 1, I did mention a game-breaking bug or two that affected the trophies and achievements. Luckily, I didn't run into any of those issues with The Occupation. The bugs I mentioned earlier did affect gameplay and could lead to not earning trophies or achievements, but the bugs weren't always present, so I was always able to complete the leads and tasks with ease. All in all, The Occupation is a solid first-person stealth adventure game. The tension was great as you have to continuously keep an eye on NPCs roaming the halls. The save feature is a little annoying, but everything else about the game is great. There are bugs present in this game, but none are so game-breaking like the ones I mentioned in Ether 1. That said, I give this beautiful buggy mess, also known as The Occupation, 4 briefcases out of 5. It's a great game and I totally recommend it. And on a related note, it looks like White Paper Games has another game listed on their site as well, so I think I have a new game to look out for. Well, that does it for this year's reviews. I hope everyone out there has a safe and happy New Year's. And, as always, thank you for watching.